talking. It's weird because there's like a 30-second delay, so it's always like making sure that it's working there. Well, good morning again. We are going to be starting a new series. And quick before we forget, for those who are online, I see a few popping up there. Just to go over again kind of quickly our snow policies or whatever you want to call it. Churches have all these like different things to go through. For us, if it is snowing, very, very unlikely that we would cancel service. It just gets complicated because people like don't catch it, it's canceled, and they make it out, and it's like nobody's here, and so it's easier just to do it. Now, with that said, one, if you don't make it, that's totally fine. That's just where you're at. That's, mattering what kind of vehicle you have, how far you're coming, how your roads are, how comfortable you feel. All those things come into factor. And we're just going to assume that you know better than anybody else on that, so you can make your decisions on that. And if you are serving in some way, it's not worth risking coming out if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have the stuff. So you just say, hey, I can't make it today. You call in, and we'll figure it out. Usually on a snow day like today, it will be a small crew. And so if something isn't quite the way it was normally, not a big deal. We'll make it through. So just in future references, if you're going, I wonder if church is canceled. Now, if there's like 10 feet of snow and it's the end of the world, I don't know. We'll figure it out then when that happens. But until then, it's just easier just to kind of go forward with what we have going on. But today, we are going to be starting a new series, which I am really excited to get into. And this series is on the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, if you are familiar with your Bible, you may not even ever heard of this book. It's not a very popular book, I would say. It's in the Old Testament, and it's kind of tucked in this kind of narrative spot we're going to look at. But if you are familiar with it a little bit, you're probably like, really? Like, that's really what we're going to be doing? Like, that seems a little weird. Well, one, it is a little weird as far as books of the Bible go. It is something that is, once you learn its format and once you learn what it's really trying to say, you go, oh, wait, I never really thought of it that way. I never really thought of what's going on. It is in a section of books in the Bible that are categorized as the wisdom books, right? Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, I know, I picked the ones that I can't say. Ecclesiastes, and then Job. And a great companion to read while we're going through this would be to read the book of Proverbs while we read through this. If you're familiar with the book of Proverbs, it's a book of Proverbs, right? Proverbs are little sayings or little stanzas that have some kind of wisdom or some kind of cause and effect type things. If you do this, this will happen. Now, wisdom is more than just knowing what is right and wrong, right? It's more than just having the right answers for things, right? And when you read through the book of Proverbs, it will tell you things like, if you live this way, things will go well for you. But if any of you have actually lived in the world, you have moments in life where you have lived X, Y, Z, and done it right, and still things don't work out. Now, we also have plenty of examples in our lives where we didn't do it right, and things didn't work out. So that's where Proverbs is saying, hey, look, here's the wisdom. Do this. This will work out well for you. Then Ecclesiastes comes along and goes, yeah, but sometimes it doesn't. And how do you deal with that? How do you wrestle with that? How do you hold on to hope and hold on to the future when it just seems like there's so much out of our control? Proverbs would be like, no, hey, there's a lot in your control. You can do this. Go for it. And Ecclesiastes is like, yeah, that's good. Do that. But there's going to be days where it doesn't seem like anything is working. There's going to be moments where it feels like, why do we even try in this? And if you can't wrestle with those moments, life is really hard. Life is really hard. And the scriptures are gracious to us in that they give us things like the Proverbs. They give us wisdom. They give us direction. They give us concrete, hey, do this and this will most likely work out for you. And it also has places like Ecclesiastes and Job where we can go, oh, but when it doesn't work out, how do I move forward? Another reason for doing this book right now is I look at our culture And I go, there's so many things that we need, but I think the biggest thing that we need right now is wisdom. We have technology and the right answers for so many things, but wisdom is so lacking. Not only is wisdom lacking in the larger scene of everything, but it's more and more disappearing everywhere. The scriptures give us kind of three different perspectives of wisdom. One is practical wisdom, especially if you read through the Proverbs. I mean, they're talking about work ethic, they talk about relationships, they talk about how to spend your time, how to set your mind on things, all these different things. And those practical wisdom sets could be like this. Today we talk about emotional intelligence, right? Not only being able to do what is right, but being able to do it in the right timing, in the right way, in the right space, right? There are times to be engaging with people in arguments, and there's times to go, I'm not going to even get involved in this, right? That's wisdom. There's times to step up and speak, and there's times to be quiet. There's times to work, and there's times to rest. That's that emotional intelligence, to be able to move those things. The Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job give us insight into even social skills, how to interact with others, how to say the right things at the right times, and when not to say the right things or the wrong things at the wrong time. We can look at practical wisdom as skills for living. Say or to do the right things at the right time. You can be very intelligent and be kind of lower on the emotional intelligence scale, practical wisdom, and you're hitting ceilings. Where the opposite can be, you could be not so bright, but be higher on this wisdom scale, right? And if any of you have been in places where you've hired people, or you've had to work with people, the straight A student is not always your best candidate. Sometimes they are. It matters what you're doing. If you're just going to put them in a room and they're going to type on their keys, okay, well, you want someone who knows what they're doing. But if they have to interact with people, if they have to be in any kind of sales or negotiation of any kind, sometimes just all the right head knowledge gets beat out by someone who can work in a team, someone who can communicate with others, right? So this practical wisdom is super important. But it also gives us this place of ethical wisdom. Not only to do what's right, but to do also what is fair and just. If we look at wisdom just as a way to get ahead and beat out others, we start to fall into something else that kind of steers away what the scriptures are calling us to. If we're stomping and stepping on others to get where we need to be, we're stepping outside of wisdom. And then also, it gives us some theological wisdom, right? That we fear God, right? The Proverbs tell us that the fear of the Lord is the foundation of knowledge, or the beginning of wisdom. So as we look through the wisdom literature, focusing mostly on Ecclesiastes, we will see it will give us some practical wisdom points. Do this, it will go well for you. It will give us some points along the way where it will be more ethical. Being, yes, succeed, win, get out there, but care for the poor, care for the marginalized, care for those who are down and out. And then also it will give us wisdom on how we relate to God. That we, in our times of success or times of failure, we relate to God in a rightful way. For all things kind of pull together when we start to do that. Ecclesiastes deals with the uncertainty of life and the hardships of life, but it is not nihilism. Right? It is not saying, yeah, just give up. Don't worry. It's not what it's saying. It's actually saying the exact opposite. If you have a Bible, we're going to... I don't know what that was. Phone. If you have a Bible and you flip open to Ecclesiastes, we're going to be in Ecclesiastes 1, but I want us to peek at the end of the book real quick. It's not a super big book, 12 chapters. But at the end, he gives his conclusion. And I just want us to read this right off the bat. I'll probably read this every week because there's some things in Ecclesiastes you're going to be like, if that's what the Bible says, I'm not sure I'm signing up for this. Right? But this is what he says. In verse 10 of 12, he says, "The teacher searched to find just the right words, And what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They're collecting saying like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making many books, there is no end. And no such wearies, and much study wearies the body. Right? So that's very Ecclesiastes. He's being like, look, the goad is like a shepherd's stick on the end. It'd have like a point or maybe even like a little nail, so you can kind of, if you have a stubborn sheep that doesn't want to move, you can move it, right? And he goes, much study wearies the body. Now in verse 13, it says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. So he goes, the teacher who many of the teachings in this book are going through, thought about the words that they chose them well. They're kind of like a goad to prod you along, but this is the conclusion. This is what you should do. Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So the teacher of Ecclesiastes is going to go through some of these dark things, but he's going to say, look, at the end of the day, fear God, follow his ways, and things will work. You'll move in that direction. And let the wearisome things that you can't control, let God figure that out and move forward with life. As we read through it, there'll be moments where it feels like maybe this is a form of nihilism, a form of giving up. But one of the things about kind of looking at this book and realizing perspective is so important is, as being someone who, they're kind of joking over here, if you live from away here in Maine, we have this thing where you really never can become a Mainer. Sorry, guys. Right? Yeah, there's a great comedian, Tim Sample, who's not from Maine. He's a jokester. I went to one of his shows once. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Over here at Deer Tree, I went to one of his shows, and he does this whole bit, and at the end, he drops the accent, and he has this like thick Massachusetts accent. I'm like, what is this? My mind just blew. Anyway, and he does this Maine humorist, and he has this whole joke about, if somebody was in Hawaii and they died, but they were born in Maine and moved to Hawaii 6 weeks later, it would say Maine man dies in Hawaii, right? No matter what. And then his neighbor who lives down the road, who born in New Hampshire, 6 months later moved to Maine, and he's getting older, and he's trying to tell him how he's a Mainer, and he has this whole joke about, if he had kittens in the oven, he wouldn't call them muffins, no matter what, which is a little dark thing going. But Maine humor, right, it doesn't matter. You've been here 90 years, you're from New Hampshire, it doesn't matter, I know you've moved 10 miles across the border, but hey, being a Mainer is all we got, guys, right? When you look at the beautiful lakes, we go, that's our lake, right? That's all we got. You live on it, we just look at it. But anyway, but Mainers have that thing, and there's a little, especially from New England, especially in Maine, there's a little sarcasm to a lot of our humor, darkness to our humor, just a little darkness, right? And as I was talking with Justin and I were talking about this, he goes, why are you doing Ecclesiastes? And I just told him, look, a few more Maine winners, and you'll be there. You'll figure it out. A few more Maine winners, and all that spunky happiness will just be sucked out of you. Right? Because there's something about, living in the cold, living in the things, you kind of can see the hardships of things. And I was thinking of a story to kind of illustrate some of these things. And I remember years ago, I was working in youth ministry, and one of the things that I would do with a lot of teenagers, especially young boys, is I would just kind of take them along with many of the tasks that I would be doing. And one of the things I was doing is I was cutting some wood to heat our house, and it was out on this little tote road, and someone had let us in there, and they dropped some trees, and we were going to pick it up, so I brought one of these young guys with me, and we cut the wood up, we loaded it up, and it was kind of late November, maybe even in December, and when we went in, the ground was pretty frozen, right? And some of you know where this is going, right? The ground was pretty frozen, and I had this old, it was a 1987 F-250 with an old work body truck, super heavy for what it was, but two-wheel drive, and we got super stuck. I mean, right up to just stuck. And I looked at him and I said, this is going to be terrible. And he's like, what are we going to do? It's just going to be terrible. And he's, what do you mean? And so we started digging, and I had a full-size jack because that's just what I do. And I just have all kinds of random tools. And we jack it up, put logs and rocks under there, drive it 3 feet, get stuck. Dig it out, put logs in it, jack it up, 3 feet stuck. I mean, we just creeping along, and we're covered in mud, and we're, and he's going, what is this? I think he had like nice shoes on, because that's what kids do today, nice clothes. He's all like, told you we're going to cut wood, and it was miserable to get out. And eventually, actually, someone came with an excavator, almost got the excavator stuck. Anyway, we probably should not have been in there at all. But things, you can look sometimes, there's things you go through and you look at it and go, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be hard. And you move forward. Same thing with getting stuck. I remember one year we were, me and a friend of mine, older gentleman, we went on a trip to Africa. And we were in one of these old military style Jeep type, caravan type vehicles, and they just had us loaded in there. It was great. There's no rules. You just live life out there, right? So we're all stacked in the back of this vehicle, and we're out in what they call the bush. Did they use that term out in Africa? Like the bush. So you have the bush, which is like what we call the woods. Then the bush is like the woods beyond the woods, right? So we're just like hours on these like dirt roads. We're going out. We're not seeing any people for miles and miles and miles. We're getting out there, and we get stuck in the sand. I mean, it's just soft sand. We just sink in. And the organization we were with had a school that they were running. So the group that was with us was mostly like 18 to like 21-year-olds, a bunch of kids, right? And we get out, and they're all just like, what do we do? But me and my Maine buddy, I don't know if he was born in Maine, so maybe I just slipped him in there. But we get out there, and we get under the vehicle, and we start looking, and I go, so what do we need to do? And he's like, and so we start with our hands bailing out sand and getting the kids in there, and they're like, I don't want it. It's like, this is going to be terrible. Right? Another situation. This is going to be hard. This is going to get through, but we're going to make it through. And there's a part of our culture that more over time, as we get more technology and more stuff and more entertainment, to do the hard things is becoming harder and harder. Right? For most people in the world, even today and then through time, doing the hard thing was called life. Right? That's just what you did. Things were hard. You did not expect things to work out quite as well as they do today. Now, I'm grateful that we live today and not, 100, 200, 300 years ago. There's things that are romantic about that, but, living past 50 is kind of nice. Being able to walk straight and do all those things is kind of beautiful. So I don't want to go back into that, but we kind of are losing something, this resilience and a fortitude that when we can't look at the hurts and the brokenness and the hardships of life, we like to tuck that away. Right? And the book of Ecclesiastes and Job is saying, no, don't hide that stuff. Live through it. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's moving through this. And while you're going through those things that seem hard and difficult, fear the Lord, follow his commandments, trust that he'll bring you through. Another thing that wisdom does, especially looking at the hard things, along with the good things, is it allows us to be more honest. It allows us to be more honest. There's a little grid that you can use to kind of help you navigate how kind of honest and open you are with others in the world. And there's 4 quadrants, if you will, X, Y kind of thing, or like a window. And one is things in you that are known to you and also known to others. Okay, we'll put that over here. Right? You know it, everybody knows it. Then there's things that are known to others, but you don't know. Right? If you're married, right? There's things about your spouse that you know about them, but they don't. Right? Many times in situations where there's spouse or friends or people that are really close to you, many people can realize that you're stressed out before you know that you're really stressed out. Right? Oh, you're doing that thing again. What are you talking about? I'm fine. Right? Blind spots, we call that. Right? So we have our arena, place where we know, everybody knows. We have our blind spots. People know this about us, but we don't. And then we also have down in the lower quadrant things that are not known to others, but known to self. Right? That's really kind of where we put into like a facade, or things that are kind of hidden that we don't want maybe others to know. And that's healthy to even have some things there. We want to move things out of that area as we move forward in life. And then the other area is things that are not known to others and not known to ourselves. Unknown. There's things in us that we just, they pop up every once in a while, and And a part of maturing in life, and wisdom really helps us, it helps us move what is appropriate out of that place of the unknown or the facade and into the place of the arena. Now, when we go through this type of little window, it is not saying that everybody needs to know your stuff, right? Facebook is not helpful, right? This idea of, what are you thinking, right? And Facebook asks us that. It's like, what do you care, right? But we've come into this area where we want things to be known out that way. But honesty and wisdom really helps us be healthy and move those things. This is kind of a modern psychological process here that I go, oh, the guys, 3,000-4,000 years ago were onto this stuff in the text of Scripture as they're in here. Before we get into the text, as we have this idea of what is wisdom, and we need these different aspects of wisdom, and they help us with the hard things of life, they help us with the challenges, the things that are going to be hard and terrible. They help us pull out things that are maybe deep within us that need to be examined or exposed. One thing to look at is the structure of the book of Ecclesiastes. This is kind of like an intro to this book. One, as you read through it, there's two kind of voices that are coming up. One, there's the author. Now, authorship of the book of Ecclesiastes goes kind of in two camps. These are the ideas that are out there if you're kind of interested in some of this stuff. Maybe it doesn't mean much to you, that's fine. Some would say that it is written by King Solomon, right? That he is writing this. And there's some clues in the text, even though it doesn't straight out say that King Solomon is writing the book, there's some clues in the text to let us know, because there's some things that the teacher, the author is saying that he has done that would cue us into that. There's another camp, so as we go through this, there may be times that I will say, and Solomon says, because that's just in my background. There's another camp, which is probably actually a little more right, is that this writing was in a time period that was probably after Solomon, and it's an art form, if you will, that takes the persona of a king and writes it as from their perspective. It's kind of like, this is what someone would say who has achieved all these things, because there's very few people that have achieved all these things and are making this point moving forward. It doesn't really matter who exactly the author is, but it's important that we know that there's the author's voice, and then there's the teacher's voice, right? And the word there is kohethel, going through, and it wasn't. And teacher's not a great translation of the word. It is more like speaker. Right? There's moments in Israel's history where all the nation would kind of come together, and there would be a teacher who would teach the people or speak to the people. And the teacher would have a lot of weight, have a lot of wisdom in going forward. And so the book is kind of set up in a way that the author is saying, hey, here's what the teacher has said. There's some wisdom in that. But then there's this other wisdom that comes alongside. This is what the teacher says, and that's true, but he adds some things in there. And if you miss that back and forth in the text, it gets a little confusing at times, and it gets a little like, 1 second it's like everything is dead and dreary and give up, and then he's like, yeah, but enjoy your work and enjoy what you do, and you're like, well, let's go, right? Because there's the teacher, and he kind of sets the teacher up as this foundational piece, but then he goes, yeah, it's true, but, and he keeps linking it out. So if you miss that, I just want to set that up before we get into the text, because if you miss that, you'll miss kind of the point of what's going on in the book. So let's take a look at Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And through the next, quite a few weeks, we'll be going through the whole book. So forces us to look at texts that maybe we'd like to skip. I know there's a few in here that I'm like, ah. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. So that's a little hint, maybe it's a song. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. All right, we're done. We can just wrap up and move forward. Right? Some of your Bibles may say vanity. Anybody else have anything else other than vanity or meaningless? Right? So this first opening paragraph, many people who have read the book of Ecclesiastes, this is about as far as they get. Right? Because they're just like, what is this? What is going on? Well, real quick, one of the things that I want to focus on in this first little line here is the scriptures are translated from different languages, right? And I don't want to, this little thing I'm going to explain to you, I don't want to undermine the translation of scripture and go, well, if I can't just read it for what it is, then well, how am I supposed to read it? Well, you're going to get 98% of the stuff and just read it as it is. But there's a few little spots where the translation doesn't help us. Because when we read meaningless, we just read it as like hopeless, right? There's just no purpose. And that's not exactly what I think the original meaning of this is supposed to mean. Because the word there in meaningless, which will happen like over 40 times through this book, so buckle up, is the word hevel, or haval, right? And it means vapor or smoke, right? Just there it is, and there it's gone, right? It seems like it's there. It seems like there's something of substance, but it quickly disappears. In James chapter 4, verse 3, it says, now listen, you who say tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why do you even know what will happen tomorrow? What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Right? So right here in the beginning of Ecclesiastes, he's not saying that life is meaningless. He's saying like, it's short. Hey girls. It is short, shorter for others. Life is short. It's like, here it is, and you feel like you finally got it, and it's just gone. And many of us, as we age and go through life, we experience this more and more. Loved ones who pass away, and close ones, and moments where you have an experience, car crash or a health scare, and all of a sudden it's like you've had all these plans and everything in front of you, and you start to go, whoa, wait a minute, I can't even guarantee today. How do I live in this? I remember a couple of years ago, for me, I had just a rather weird health experience. I was out working, and my other kind of career job, whatever you want to call it, business, is I sharpen scissors for salons and groomers, which is like a weird little world that I'm in. And I drive around a little van. Well, it was a big van then, now it's a little van. And go in and I sharpen their stuff and then move on. And it was about 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the day, and I was just feeling really dizzy, kind of tired. Well, I haven't eaten today. I have a tendency not to do that. You should be surprised if I make up for it later in the day. And so I'm going to get something to eat. And there's a little drive-through place not too far where I was working, and I went in there, and the intercom, wah, 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 and I'm telling it what I want, but just like blah, 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 like gibberish is just like coming out. And the lady's like, you're going to have to speak louder, I can't understand. And I'm like, in my head, I'm saying what I want, but my mouth is not doing it. I don't know if you ever experienced something like this. It's a pretty weird experience. And so I just leave. I just drive out of and I halfway through, I call my wife and I say, hey, I'm coming home. I'm feeling weird. Just cancel my day. Something's going on. A couple miles down the road, I then call her back, slurring and can barely function. I pulled onto the side of the road. Later found out I was up on the sidewalk, all messed up, jacked up, and trying to tell her where I am. And I know where I lived in this town. I know exactly where I couldn't. Anyway, long story short, get into the hospital. They keep asking me what's my name, and I'm just like 12. Just random numbers, and then the next thing I know, the lady's explaining to me look, we have to give you this drug. If you have a brain bleed, you will die. If it is a stroke, it will stop it where it's at. And I'm like, this is an exciting Wednesday. That is turning, and I'm sitting there just going it's weird how things just start kind of going through your head. Going is this being able to, not really walk well and use my hands and talk, is this it? I'm mid-30s, and this is if you want to give me some, just, I guess, do it, And I don't know what happened. They gave me the stuff, the episode cleared, they ran all kinds of scans. The next day, some weird stuff happened again. It's been a few years since any of that has happened, but there was a moment where it was just like, life is radically changing like that. And I had all kinds of plans in life, all kinds of things to do, and get that cheeseburger was on the list and didn't happen. Probably helped me out, right? But life is so fragile. It's so here and gone. And while that is hard to examine, there is something rich about living a life, though, that we go, it's here and it's gone. When we live like we're never going to end, we live like nothing is going to stop us, there's an arrogance and there's a missing of the sweet things. So right off the beginning, the teacher's setting the place. He's not saying meaningless, meaningless. He's saying, if we could translate it again, it would be like, life is short. Everything is short. Everything is like a vapor, just disappearing. In verse 3, what do people gain from all their labors, at which they toil under the sun? This verse, this